before the first pyramid rose from the sands, before the stones of Stonehenge felt the touch of human hands, there was a world long forgotten, a civilization so ancient its story predates history itself. Not 10,000, not 20, but 97,000 years ago. Hidden beneath oceans, buried under mountains, and erased by time, traces of this mysterious civilization whisper through our past. In myths, in ruins, and in the questions no archaeologist can yet answer. Tonight, we journey into the untold mystery of the 97,000-year-old civilization. Before we begin, if you truly enjoy my work, please like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's begin. Before the first city, before the first written word, before history even had a name, there was a silence, a long ancient silence, filled only with the rhythm of wind and ocean and fire. It was a time we have forgotten, yet it may be the time that made us who we are. For centuries we believed that civilization began just 6,000 years ago, with Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the slow march of mankind into reason and order. But beneath the dust of deserts and the waves of forgotten seas, something older sleeps, something that does not fit our textbooks. In the highlands of southern Africa lie thousands of circular stone ruins, scattered across the earth like constellations fallen from the sky. They stretch for miles across plains and valleys, older than the pyramids, older than the Ice Age itself. The locals call them Adam's calendar. Archaeologists call them impossible. When measured, each stone ring aligns perfectly with the movements of the stars, the solstices, the equinox, the path of the sun, not by chance but by design. Whoever built them understood the heavens, in a way we thought only modern science could. Yet the dating suggests something staggering. 97,000 years old. At that time, according to everything we've been taught, humans were nothing more than hunters wandering the wild. No cities, no art, no understanding of astronomy. And yet, here they were, building monuments that spoke the language of the cosmos. How could this be? Who taught them to speak with the stars? Some say these ruins were made by early tribes guided by nature itself. Others believe they are remnants of a civilization, advanced, organized, and ancient beyond imagination, wiped clean from history. Imagine standing there at dawn, the cold air biting your skin, the sound of nothing but your own breath. And as the sun rises, its first light slips between two stones, striking a third, perfectly aligned. Not chaos, not chance, mathematics, intention. Every clue we uncover adds to the question, what if the beginning of history is not a beginning at all? What if it's the middle, the start of something reborn after being erased? There are stories, scattered across the world, of a time before time. The Sumerians called it the Age of the Gods. The Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time when divine beings walked the earth, and the elders of Africa tell of the first people, builders of sound and stone, whose voices could move the mountains. Myth, they say, but myths are memories that refuse to die. The deeper we dig, the more the earth resists, as if she's protecting her oldest secret. We find symbols, alignments, magnetic anomalies, all whispering that something once stood here long before we did. A civilization with knowledge that vanished like smoke before the storm of time. Maybe they destroyed themselves, maybe nature did it for them, or maybe, just maybe, they never vanished at all. Perhaps their memory flows quietly through our DNA, through the ancient pull we feel when we look up at the stars. That strange feeling of remembering something we never lived. Before history began, they were here, watching the skies, building with stone and sound, writing their story not in books, but in the earth itself. And as we stand in the ruins of their forgotten world, one question lingers. If this was the beginning of civilization, then what came before? Before the first city, before the first written word, before history even had a name, there was a silence, a long ancient silence, filled only with the rhythm of wind and ocean and fire. It was a time we have forgotten, yet it may be the time that made us who we are. For centuries we believed that civilization began just 6,000 years ago, with Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the slow march of mankind into reason and order. But beneath the dust of deserts and the waves of forgotten seas, something older sleeps, something that does not fit our textbooks. In the highlands of southern Africa lie thousands of circular stone ruins, scattered across the earth like constellations fallen from the sky. They stretch for miles across plains and valleys, older than the pyramids, older than the Ice Age itself. The locals call them Adam's calendar. Archaeologists call them impossible. When measured, each stone ring aligns perfectly with the movements of the stars, the solstices, the equinox, the path of the sun, not by chance but by design. Whoever built them understood the heavens, in a way we thought only modern science could. Yet the dating suggests something staggering. 97,000 years old. At that time, according to everything we've been taught, humans were nothing more than hunters wandering the wild. No cities, no art, no understanding of astronomy. And yet, here they were, building monuments that spoke the language of the cosmos. How could this be? Who taught them to speak with the stars? Some say these ruins were made by early tribes guided by nature itself. Others believe they are remnants of a civilization, advanced, organized, and ancient beyond imagination, wiped clean from history. Imagine standing there at dawn, the cold air biting your skin, the sound of nothing but your own breath. And as the sun rises, its first light slips between two stones, striking a third, perfectly aligned. Not chaos, not chance, mathematics, intention. Every clue we uncover adds to the question, what if the beginning of history is not a beginning at all? What if it's the middle, the start of something reborn after being erased? There are stories, scattered across the world, of a time before time. The Sumerians called it the Age of the Gods. The Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time when divine beings walked the earth, and the elders of Africa tell of the first people, builders of sound and stone, whose voices could move the mountains. Myth, they say, but myths are memories that refuse to die. The deeper we dig, the more the earth resists, as if she's protecting her oldest secret. We find symbols, alignments, magnetic anomalies, all whispering that something once stood here long before we did. A civilization with knowledge that vanished like smoke before the storm of time. Maybe they destroyed themselves, maybe nature did it for them, or maybe, just maybe, they never vanished at all. Perhaps their memory flows quietly through our DNA, through the ancient pull we feel when we look up at the stars. That strange feeling of remembering something we never lived. Before history began, they were here, watching the skies, building with stone and sound, writing their story not in books, but in the earth itself. And as we stand in the ruins of their forgotten world, one question lingers. If this was the beginning of civilization, then what came before? When night falls on the ancient world and the stars open their eyes, the earth remembers. The wind carries the songs of those who once built not for kings, but for the cosmos. They were not ordinary people. They were the builders of the stars, across continents, from the sands of Africa to the frozen edges of the Andes. Their fingerprints can still be seen. Circles of stone that mirror the heavens, lines carved into the earth that point unerringly to Orion, to Sirius, to the Pleiades. It is as if they wanted to remind the future we knew where we came from. We have found them on every shore. In Africa, the ruins of Adam's calendar align with the Milky Way. In Egypt, the pyramids echo the pattern of Orion's belt. And in South America, the temples of Teotihuacan and Machu Picchu trace the same cosmic map, as though drawn from one invisible hand. 3 cultures, 3 worlds apart, yet one story written across the stars. Archaeologists say coincidence, but coincidence does not carve granite with millimeter precision. It does not stretch across oceans separated by tens of thousands of years. The builders of the stars, whoever they were, saw the sky as a reflection of themselves. They understood that to build on earth was to mirror heaven. Their monuments were not tombs, they were instruments measuring time, tracking the movements of suns, moons, and unseen constellations. Imagine them thousands of years before recorded history. No iron, no wheel, no written word. And yet they could measure the precession of the equinox. They could align stone with starlight over centuries. They could speak to the universe through geometry. What kind of mind could do that? Modern engineers admit some of these alignments would be nearly impossible without advanced tools. Yet they stand, flawless, unmoved by time, unbent by the Earth's shifting crust. It's as if the stones themselves were alive, obeying the whisper of the stars. We have always looked up, but maybe once, long ago, we understood what we were looking at. Some researchers believe these builders were part of a single global culture, connected before the oceans rose, before the flood myths were born. An ancient people who mapped the sky when the world was one, when the stars guided not sailors, but souls. And maybe that's why so many creation stories begin with the heavens, the gods descending from the sky, the knowledge of fire, of numbers, of sound, gifts that came not from below, but from above. Perhaps they were not gods at all. Perhaps they were simply humans who remembered more, who carried the wisdom of a lost world before time forgot its name. And through their monuments they tried to leave us a message. We were here. We watched the stars. We knew what you would forget, each alignment, each stone, each myth of gods and celestial fire, all part of a silent map that leads back to them. But where does it lead? Why did they carve the heavens into the earth, only to vanish without a trace? In every civilization that followed, fragments of their memory reappeared. The ziggurats, the temples, the sacred geometry. Echoes of a time when humans and the stars were one. We call them myths, but perhaps they were blueprints. Lessons left for a future that would once again search the skies and ask the same question. Who are we, and what have we forgotten? The ocean keeps secrets better than time. Beneath its dark weight lies the greatest archive of human history, one that speaks not with words, but with silence. For centuries we've walked the earth believing civilization began on land. But perhaps our story began beneath the waves. There are places the sea hides, ancient terraces, half-buried temples, and roads that lead nowhere. Ruins so old they mock the limits of our timelines. And yet they exist, carved, measured, deliberate. In the waters off the coast of Japan, divers discovered what they first thought was a natural rock formation. Massive stone steps descending into darkness. Columns, platforms, and passageways too precise to be random. They called it the Yonaguni Monument, and it may have stood above water over 10,000 years ago. Or longer. Who built it? And why has the ocean taken it back? Half a world away off the coast of India lies another mystery. Dwarka, the fabled city of Lord Krishna. Long believed to be legend, it was found beneath 70 feet of water, perfectly laid out in grids, streets, walls, and temples. Sonar scans show patterns far too advanced for the Bronze Age. What if these were not isolated discoveries, but fragments of a world that once stretched across continents? A civilization erased not by war or time, but by the sea itself. The old myths all agree on one thing, the flood. From the Bible's Noah to Mesopotamia's Utnapishtim, from the Hindu Manu to the stories of the Maya, the earth drowned once. And in that drowning, an age ended. But what if the flood wasn't a single event? What if it was a cycle, a cleansing the planet remembers and repeats? Ice melts, the oceans rise, and history is swallowed whole. The 97,000-year-old civilization could have been the first to vanish, leaving behind only stone, the one thing the water could not completely erase. Archaeologists speak of submerged cities off Cuba, Malta, the Bahamas, and the coast of Egypt, geometric, deliberate, ancient. All share a strange alignment, as if once they belonged to a world that knew the stars and the sea as one. Could it be that these builders, the same who aligned their temples with Orion, also built beneath the sunken continents? If so, perhaps the ocean floor is not a grave, but a library. The more we look, the more we find, and the deeper we go, the older the ruins become. But still, no names, no bones, only echoes. Some say these were the cities of Atlantis or Lemuria, mythic lands that fell when pride and power grew too great. Others whisper they were not destroyed, but chosen, to begin again elsewhere, when the waters receded. When you stand by the shore and listen to the waves, there's a strange rhythm beneath the surface, like breathing, like memory. It's the same pulse our ancestors once heard before the world went silent. Maybe that's why the sea still calls to us, because deep beneath it, the bones of another age still dream, a forgotten city waiting to rise again, or to be remembered by those who dare to listen. There comes a moment in every age when the earth decides to begin again, when the sky grows dark, the mountains burn, and the sea remembers its power. The ancients called it judgment. The poets called it the flood. But we know it as the great forgetting. Imagine a world, vast, connected, alive with stone cities and star temples. A civilization that had mapped the heavens, understood the pulse of the earth, and walked in harmony with both. And then, one day, the sky broke. It began with fire from above. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas Impact Event, a comet or meteor that struck the planet with unimaginable force. But long before the scientists, the stories were already there. Of a serpent in the sky, a god's wrath, the day the stars fell. Ice melted, oceans rose, the ground shook for months, rain fell for generations, the earth bled, and with it history. Entire continents drowned, mountains cracked open, and those who survived scattered like ashes in the wind. Knowledge turned to whispers, language turned to myth. The people of that lost world, the builders, the dreamers, the astronomers, became legends. We remember them only as gods, but they were us, before we forgot. When the waters calmed and the fires died, the survivors began again, in caves, in small tribes, carrying only fragments of memory. They remembered how to plant, how to look at the stars, how to honour the cycles of the sun, but the great cities were gone, the instruments of stone and sound shattered or buried under miles of silt. And slowly the earth covered the evidence. Forests grew over temples, deserts swallowed cities, the sea closed its hands, and humanity awoke centuries later, alone, believing it was the first. We called our beginning civilization, we called it progress, but maybe it was recovery, a species remembering how to breathe after nearly drowning in its own forgotten past. Even now, traces of that ancient trauma live in every culture. The great flood of Noah, the sinking of Atlantis, the wrath of Shiva, the fall of the sky serpent, different tongues, same wound. But why did they all tell the same story? Why did every civilization remember a time before time and a catastrophe that ended it? Some believe it was punishment, others a cycle. But what if it was neither? What if the great forgetting wasn't destruction, but design? Maybe the earth resets not to erase, but to evolve. Maybe every ending is an invitation for memory to be reborn in a new form, a new mind, a new age. And so the echoes of that ancient world linger, in myths, in symbols, in the geometry of temples we still cannot explain. They are the heartbeat of something that refuses to die, something waiting to be remembered. From the ashes of the forgotten came the birth of the gods, and the stories they left behind. When the floodwaters receded, when the fire finally died, and when the last echoes of thunder vanished into the mountains, the world was quiet again. But it was not empty. From the ashes of the old world, a few survived. Scattered, wounded, but alive, carrying fragments of knowledge too ancient to belong to their new beginnings. And when they walked among the people who rose after them, they were remembered as gods. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, beings of light who descended from the heavens and taught humanity the arts of civilization, writing, agriculture, the calendar of the stars. In Egypt, they were called the Netters, divine beings who walked the Nile long before the first pharaoh. In South America, the Inca told of Viracocha, the bearded god who rose from the sea to rebuild the world after a great flood. And in ancient India, they were known as the Devas, the shining ones who carried knowledge from a world destroyed. Different names, different lands, but one memory, Perhaps they were not gods at all. Perhaps they were the last survivors of the 97,000-year-old civilization, bearers of memory, of mathematics, of language and sound. To the tribes they met, they seemed divine, but they were simply human. Humans who remembered what others had forgotten. They rebuilt where they could, teaching stone, sky, and seed. Every temple that rose in their honour was not built for worship but remembrance, a monument to a time before the great forgetting. But the centuries blurred their image. The knowledge they carried became myth, and myth became religion. We began to speak of them not as teachers but as celestial beings, descended from stars or from heaven. Perhaps both were true. Perhaps they were the bridge between what we were and what we would become. Their knowledge of astronomy, geometry, and energy was passed down as stories of magic and miracles. Their symbols, the serpent, the winged sun, the sacred tree, appear in every ancient culture as if echoing the same source. Maybe these gods didn't want to be worshipped. Maybe they wanted to be remembered. But memory is fragile, and time is a cruel editor. Their teachings became riddles, their science became faith, and the truth slipped quietly between the cracks of time. Yet even now we feel them. In the architecture of temples, the rhythm of chants, the golden ratios hidden in art and sound. They live in the sacred geometry of the world itself, in the way we still look up at the stars, wondering where we came from. The memory of the gods is not about divinity, it's about origin. It's about who we once were, before history divided us, before we forgot we were one. And maybe that is why every civilization, no matter how distant or different, built toward the heavens, because deep down something inside us remembers the sky. But what did they know? What secrets of energy, of sounds, of creation did they carry that could shape stone like clay and speak with the pulse of the earth itself? There are things the ancients knew, things they could do, that we still can't explain. Temples that hum with perfect frequency, stones that defy the tools of their time, monuments that seem to breathe with the rhythm of the earth itself. This is not myth, this is the forbidden knowledge. When the survivors of the old world walked among the people of the new, they carried fragments of something powerful, a science so pure it bordered on the divine. It was not built on machines or metals, but on sound, vibration, and resonance. They believed, as the builders of the stars once did, that everything in existence is made of frequency, that to know the world you must know its song. And somehow they did. In Egypt, walls whisper with harmonic precision, each chamber tuned to a specific tone that vibrates through the body like memory. In the Andes, stones fit so tightly together, no blade can pass between them. Not carved, but shaped through heat and sound. And in India, the temples still hum when you strike their pillars, as if the stone itself remembers music older than mankind. How did they do this? How did they bend matter with the grace of art and the precision of physics? Some believe they understood the hidden structure of sound and the resonance that binds reality, that their chants and instruments weren't spiritual performances, but mathematical tools, that the same frequencies that heal and lift the human mind could also move stone, alter weight, or awaken energy from the earth. It sounds like fantasy until you listen, until you stand inside one of these ancient chambers, whisper a single note, and hear the walls answer back. Modern engineers have tried to recreate it and failed. Archaeologists call it coincidence. But too many coincidences begin to sound like a pattern. Maybe this knowledge wasn't lost. Maybe it was sealed. Because power like that, the ability to harness the natural forces of the world, can build civilizations or destroy them. What if the 97,000-year-old civilization wasn't destroyed by the heavens, but by its own creation, a technology beyond understanding, turned against itself in the Great Forgetting? Many myths hint at it. The Sumerians speak of divine weapons that split mountains. The Vedic texts tell of celestial fire brighter than 1,000 suns, echoes of energy unleashed before its time. Perhaps that is why the survivors became the gods. Not because they were divine, but because they were the keepers of something humanity was not yet ready to hold again. And so they scattered their knowledge, in symbols, in architecture, in sound, hiding the pieces across the world like fragments of a song only the awakened could one day play again. Somewhere in that forgotten harmony lies the secret to who we were, the code that connects sound, stone, and soul, the ancient melody that shaped mountains, moved oceans, and gave rise to life itself. We are still trying to remember the song. But before we find it again, we must first follow another clue, the maps that should not exist. Maps that remember a world before the flood, drawn by hands that should have never known it. There are maps that should not exist, drawn centuries before we had telescopes, satellites, or the courage to cross the edge of the world. Maps that show coastlines buried beneath ice, and continents that no one had yet seen. These are the maps of the impossible. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis created a map unlike any the world had known. It depicted South America, Africa, and something else. A landmass at the bottom of the world, Antarctica, drawn with stunning accuracy and impossibly without ice. But Antarctica's icy crown has covered it for more than 6,000 years. So who mapped its naked shores, and when? Piri Reis himself claimed he used ancient source maps, documents far older than his own age, inherited from lost civilizations. He wrote that some of his sources dated back to the time of Alexander and beyond. But beyond how far? The precision of the coastlines, the proportional measurements of continents, even the curvature of the earths, all shown long before modern navigation. Someone, long before us, saw the planet from the sky. Someone who knew the world whole. The Piri Reis map is not alone. Other charts, like the Oronteus Phineas map of 1531 and the Bouaché map of the 18th century, also depict a southern continent, traced with vivises and mountains that match modern sonar images beneath Antarctica's ice. These cartographers didn't invent what they drew. They inherited it, copied it from older sources, sources that no longer exist, or perhaps no longer belong to this world. Could it be that the survivors of the 97,000-year-old civilization mapped the Earth as it once was, before the cataclysm, before the oceans rose? If they truly had global reach, then the world itself would have been their canvas. They might have travelled from pole to pole, charting not for conquest, but remembrance. Recording what they knew would soon be lost. What kind of knowledge does it take to map a continent you can't see? To measure the curvature of the planet before mathematics had names for it? To understand the Earth as a sphere, long before the sailors of later centuries dared to believe it? These are not the works of guesswork or chance, they are memories. Perhaps those who made them saw the world from above, not through technology as we know it, but through something older, more intuitive, a mastery of observation, energy, or even perspective that we can't yet comprehend. Every one of these maps carries a whisper, a reminder that someone once knew too much, too soon, and when their world fell, their knowledge drifted across the centuries like bottled messages on a cosmic tide. We've been finding those bottles ever since, and mistaking them for miracles. If these maps are the memory of a forgotten world, then the lines that trace their shores are not just borders, but instructions. Perhaps they were meant to lead us back to the truth of who first measured the earth, and what they left waiting beneath the ice. But stone speaks louder than ink, and in the next chapter we follow the voices carved in rock, messages left by hands that refuse to be silenced. Stone does not speak in words, it remembers. When everything else is lost, when fire burns the parchment and oceans drown the cities, stone endures, and through it the ancients spoke. Every line carved, every mark etched, every spiral drawn, all carry the same unshakable message. We were here. Across the world, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of the Amazon, we find the same symbols repeating. The spiral, the serpent, the sun, the eye that sees in all directions, different lands, different languages, yet the same voice, as if one story was being told through 1,000 hands. Who are they trying to reach, us or the earth itself? Some of these markings are so old they predate written language, by tens of thousands of years. They are not random art, they are mathematics, they are sound, they are memory carved into matter. Look closer at the petroglyphs in Australia, the Nazca lines of Peru, the carvings of Göbekli Tepe, and you'll see the same geometry hidden within them. Triangles, ratios, circles of perfect measure. A universal language that only the patient earth could keep alive. It's as if these symbols were meant not to be read, but to be felt. Each one a vibration, a frequency of remembrance. The ancients didn't write books, they wrote resonance. And in that resonance lies their message. We are not alone in time. What if these carvings were not just records, but keys? Keys to activate something deeper, to awaken memory in the human spirit, to reconnect us to the vibration they once understood. Even now, archaeologists uncover entire walls covered in patterns that defy explanation. Circles within circles, stars within stones, and everywhere the same golden proportions that appear in seashells, galaxies, and the human body itself. Coincidence or design? Perhaps the 97,000-year-old civilization wasn't only trying to survive, perhaps they were trying to be heard. Knowing that their words would fade, they carved their language into the bones of the world, so that when we were ready, we'd hear their echo again. And maybe, just maybe, we already have. The more we uncover, the more familiar these symbols feel, as if we've seen them before in dreams, in meditation, in the quiet between thoughts. It's as though the memory of these shapes lives within us, waiting for recognition. Because maybe their greatest creation wasn't the temples or the monuments, it was us. Humanity, a vessel for their memory, a continuation of their story. Every stone whispers the same truth, that time is not a straight line, that what was lost can return through remembrance, and that the past is still speaking, if we only learn how to listen. And as those whispers grow louder, the earth itself begins to stir, reminding us that history is not finished. The earth never truly forgets, it waits, beneath stone and ice, beneath jungles and deserts. It keeps its secrets until the time is right to reveal them again. And now, that time is beginning. Across the planet, the past is surfacing. Satellite scans reveal buried cities beneath the sands of Egypt and the Amazon. Sonar maps find megalithic walls deep below the oceans, and ancient DNA links tribes across continents once thought isolated by impossible distance. Science is beginning to whisper the same story myth has sung for millennia, a story that stretches back, farther than we ever dared to believe. For thousands of years, we told ourselves civilization began just 6 millennia ago, but now the evidence speaks louder. From Göbekli Tepe's temples that predate history, to tools buried under volcanic ash older than humanity's supposed dawn. Each discovery pushes the horizon further back, and with it, a quiet realization takes root. We are not the first. In laboratories and excavation sites, scientists run their tests again and again, finding patterns that defy explanation. Stone that seems to have been melted, not carved. Mathematics encoded in ruins predating all known cultures, and alignments that match the stars as they appeared, not 1,000 years ago, but tens of thousands. Every clue is a spark, every spark a reminder. Perhaps this is not discovery, but remembrance. The ancients always said that one day when humanity was ready, the earth would reveal what she had hidden, that the stones would speak again, and the skies would show their mirrors once more. And now, as we scan the heavens and the ground beneath our feet, we are beginning to see the reflection. The same geometry that built their temples now appears in our technology, in the spiral of DNA, in the rhythm of sound waves and galaxies. It's as if the universe is speaking in the same language the ancients left behind, and we're finally learning how to listen. Some say it's coincidence, others say it's destiny, but maybe it's neither. Maybe it's the circle, completing itself. The long cycle of forgetting and remembering that defines every age. We are not inventing the future. We are recalling it, piece by piece, layer by layer. The blueprint of a forgotten civilization is being rewritten in our own time. And perhaps that's what they wanted. Perhaps the builders of the stars knew that one day we'd rise again, reach for the sky as they once did, and feel the same ache of memory, the same question echoing through eternity. Have we been here before? The ruins, the myths, the alignments, they are not endings, they are beginnings, repeating. The past has not returned to haunt us. It has come back to guide us, because soon the veil between what was and what will be will open once more. And when it does, we'll remember not just what they built, but why they vanished. Long before the towering skyscrapers of modern cities and the fast-paced lives we now live, there was a world so intricate, so deeply rooted in nature and the stars, that its legacy still echoes across the lands it once called home. This was the world of the Mayans, an extraordinary civilization that blossomed in the heart of what we now call Central America. Their story begins thousands of years ago, long before European explorers ever set foot in the Americas. The Mayans were one of the most brilliant and fascinating ancient civilizations in human history. Their roots dig deep into the soil of Mesoamerica, an area that today includes southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and parts of El Salvador. In these lush, mountainous, and jungle-covered lands, the Maya people built a society that would leave behind some of the most impressive ruins, myths, and mysteries of the ancient world. The story of the Maya begins around 2000 BCE, when early farming communities started to emerge in the region. These early people began to cultivate maize or corn, which became the backbone of their diet and culture. As generations passed, their societies became more organized, their homes more structured, and their beliefs more deeply rooted in the rhythms of the earth and sky. They studied the stars, mapped the heavens, built towering pyramids, and developed a writing system unlike anything seen before in the Americas. By the time the classic period of Maya civilization began around 250 CE, they had already established a number of powerful city-states, each with its own rulers, priests, and grand temples reaching toward the heavens. The Maya weren't one single empire ruled by a central power, but rather a network of independent cities, each competing for influence and power, much like the city-states of ancient Greece. These cities, names like Tikal, Palenque, Copan, and Calakmul, rose majestically from the jungles with their stone pyramids and plazas, their sacred ball courts and observatories. Life in these cities was bustling, colourful, and spiritual. Artisans crafted beautiful pottery and stone carvings. Farmers worked the land and priests observed the sky, predicting celestial events with astounding precision. The rulers of these cities were not just kings. They were believed to be divine intermediaries between the gods and the people. Religion, politics, and science were deeply intertwined in Mayan life, forming a culture that was rich in meaning and purpose. As the centuries passed, the Mayans developed one of the most sophisticated calendars in the ancient world. Their knowledge of astronomy allowed them to track the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with astonishing accuracy. They could predict solar eclipses, track Venus through the sky, and align their temples to the solstices and equinoxes. They measured time, not just in years or days, but in cycles upon cycles, believing that time itself was sacred and moved in great repeating patterns. Their famous long count calendar, which sparked widespread fascination and confusion in 2012, was a masterpiece of mathematical and astronomical knowledge, counting not just years but vast epochs of human and cosmic history. Perhaps even more impressive was their writing system. The Maya were the only ancient civilization in the Americas to develop a fully functional system of writing. Their hieroglyphs, carved into stone, painted on pottery, and written in codices made from bark, told stories of gods and kings, battles and alliances, rituals and myths. These written records, many of which have been deciphered by modern scholars, offer us a window into their world, their thoughts and their fears. Through them we learn not only of great wars and powerful dynasties, but also of dreams, poems, and the everyday lives of people who lived more than 1,000 years ago. Yet, their achievements were not limited to the intellectual. The Mayans were master builders and engineers. Without metal tools, draft animals, or even the wheel, they constructed massive stone structures that still stand today, hidden among the jungles, visited by tourists and studied by archaeologists. They built vast cities with intricate layouts, including roads, temples, palaces, and ball courts. Their step pyramids, such as the one found at Chichen Itza, rise majestically into the sky, their staircases aligned with the stars, their architecture echoing both power and reverence. These cities were not just political centers, they were sacred landscapes designed to mirror the cosmos, connecting the heavens, earth, and the underworld. The civilization flourished for centuries, reaching its peak between 250 and 900 CE, a period known as the Classic Era. During this time, Mayan cities were at their most powerful, trade networks flourished, art and science thrived, and rulers commissioned elaborate monuments in their honor. These stelae, tall stone slabs, often featured detailed portraits of the kings, accompanied by hieroglyphic inscriptions recording their victories, rituals, and ties to the gods. The Maya elite lived in stone palaces and presided over grand ceremonies involving music, dance, incense, and offerings, bloodletting rituals, in which nobles would offer their own blood to the gods, were common, seen as vital acts of devotion that ensured the balance of the universe. Beneath this elite class lived the common people, farmers, laborers, artisans, who made up the backbone of Maya society. They grew maize, beans, squash, and chili peppers in fields they cleared from the dense forest. They built the cities with their hands and sustained the economy through their labor. Despite the rigid class system, these people participated in religious festivals, worshipped local gods, and passed down traditions that still live on among Maya descendants today. Family life, storytelling, weaving, and farming. These everyday acts formed the true fabric of Mayan civilization. But as we admire all that the Mayans achieved, we must also confront the mystery that still baffles historians and scientists today: the question of their decline. By the end of the 9th century, many of the great southern cities of the Classic period were abandoned. The jungle slowly reclaimed them, their towering pyramids left to the birds and the vines. The question remains why? What caused such a brilliant and thriving civilization to fade into silence? Some suggest environmental factors played a major role. Studies of lake sediments and tree rings suggest the region experienced a series of devastating droughts, possibly worsened by deforestation and overfarming. As the population grew, the land was pushed to its limits. Crops failed, cities ran out of water, and famine spread. Without a stable food supply, political tensions may have flared into full-blown warfare. The divine kings, once believed to control the forces of nature, may have lost their legitimacy in the eyes of the people. Others point to internal strife, rivalries between city-states, the collapse of trade networks, and the breakdown of royal dynasties. Warfare may have become more intense, more destructive, with no clear victors. Some monuments from this period show rulers depicted not in triumph, but in scenes of captivity or humiliation. The social contract between the people and their divine kings may have fractured, leading to rebellion, abandonment, and the unraveling of once great cities. And yet, the Mayans did not vanish. While many southern cities were abandoned, the civilization endured in the northern Yucatan Peninsula, where cities like Chichen Itza and Uxmal continued to thrive for centuries more. When the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, they found a region still populated by Maya people, still speaking their language, still practicing many of their traditions, even as colonial rule tried to erase them. The Maya never disappeared. They adapted, endured, and continued their story in the face of conquest and change. Today, millions of Maya descendants live throughout Central America. They speak the languages of their ancestors, wear traditional clothing, and celebrate rituals that have survived for thousands of years. Their resilience is a powerful reminder that civilizations do not simply fall. They transform, they adapt, and they live on in the people who carry their legacy forward. The story of the Mayan civilization is one of brilliance, beauty, mystery, and endurance. They were stargazers, architects, poets, and farmers. They carved temples that scraped the sky, developed calendars that tracked the cosmos, and wrote down their dreams in stone and ink. Their achievements rivaled those of ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and China, proof that knowledge and creativity blossomed not just in the old world, but also in the dense jungles of the new. As we gaze upon their ruins today, we are not just looking at stones and relics. We are witnessing the echoes of a people who once dreamed of the stars, who built a world in harmony with the earth and sky. And though the jungle may have taken back their cities, the spirit of the Maya lives on, in the language of a child learning the stories of his ancestors, in the weavings of a grandmother telling the time-honored tales, and in the quiet rhythm of the cornfields that still feed the people, just as they did thousands of years ago. So when we ask, who were the Mayans? We are not just asking about the past. We are seeking to understand a people who continue to shape the present. Their civilization was not just a moment in history. It is a thread woven through time, stretching from the ancient temples of Tikal to the modern towns of Guatemala, from the sky-watching priests to the farmers of today. Their story is not over. It is still being told, still being lived, and still being remembered. And as we close our eyes tonight, letting the rhythm of the past lull us into sleep, we can imagine a world lit not by electricity but by torches and stars. A world where people look to the sky not just for answers but for meaning. A world where every stone had a spirit, every tree a memory, and every life a place in the grand story of the cosmos. This was the world of the Maya, and though time may have marched on, their legacy still whispers through the leaves of the jungle, waiting for us to listen. In the quiet, misty jungles of ancient Mesoamerica, a civilization flourished that would one day leave behind puzzles etched in stone and knowledge written among the stars. The Mayans, a people often cloaked in mystery, were far more than simple farmers or temple builders. They were thinkers, observers, record keepers, and pioneers of knowledge. In a world untouched by modern tools, they charted the heavens, invented mathematical concepts that would shape the future, and created architectural wonders that have stood the test of time. Their legacy is not just visible in the ruins they left behind, but in the ideas that still influence us today. Among their most remarkable contributions was their understanding of numbers. While civilizations around the world struggled to express large quantities, the Mayans developed a mathematical system that was elegant, flexible, and surprisingly modern. They used a vigesimal system, meaning it was based on the number 20 instead of the 10 we use today, with just 3 simple symbols: a shell for 0, a dot for 1, and a bar for 5. They could represent huge numbers with ease. But what truly sets their system apart is the shell, the symbol for 0. Long before 0 was used in Europe, or even widely accepted in the Old World, the Mayans had already embraced the concept. This was not just a placeholder, but a fully functioning part of their calculations. They understood that 0 could represent nothing, and yet play a powerful role in building the numbers around it. This early recognition of 0 marks one of the great intellectual achievements of the ancient world. It allowed for complex calculations, calendar tracking, and precise astronomical observations. In many ways, the invention and use of 0 opened a door to mathematical thinking that still serves humanity to this day. Their grasp of numbers seamlessly extended into their study of the heavens. Astronomy was not simply a curiosity to the Maya. It was a necessity, a sacred duty. They believed that the movements of the stars and planets influenced life on Earth, and through careful observation, they could align their rituals and decisions with cosmic events. Their knowledge of celestial cycles was so advanced that modern researchers remain astonished by their accuracy. Without telescopes, satellites, or digital tools, the Maya tracked the motion of the sun, the moon, and the planet Venus with incredible precision. They knew that Venus had a cycle of 584 days, and they recorded its appearances and disappearances meticulously, linking them to political and religious events. Eclipses were predicted through complex calculations, and solstices and equinoxes were observed from temple observatories that were built with cosmic alignment in mind. Their calendars, perhaps their most famous creation, were more than just ways to mark time. They were reflections of the universe itself. There were multiple calendars in use, each serving a unique function. The Tulgin, a 260-day sacred calendar, was used for religious rituals, prophecy, and spiritual cycles. The Hab, a solar calendar of 365 days, kept track of agricultural and seasonal events. But the true brilliance came with the long count calendar, a linear, continuous system that could track time across thousands of years. It marked great cosmic cycles and was used to record historical events far into the past and future. This is the calendar that stirred the imagination of the world in 2012, when a misunderstanding led many to believe the Maya had predicted the end of the world. In truth, they had simply marked the end of a great cycle, just as a clock strikes midnight and begins again. To the Maya, time was not a straight line but a sacred rhythm, a repeating pattern woven into the fabric of the cosmos. Each date was a unique combination of calendar cycles, rich with meaning and influence, and they recorded these dates in stone, leaving behind histories carved into monuments, temples, and codices. As impressive as their knowledge of numbers and stars may be, it was matched by their achievements in architecture. Deep in the jungles of Mexico and Central America, rising above the trees like stairways to the heavens, the pyramids of the Maya still stand as silent testaments to their genius. These were not simple structures, they were spiritual machines, carefully aligned with celestial events and layered with symbolism. The pyramid at Chichen Itza, known as El Castillo, or the Temple of Kukulkan, is perhaps the most famous. Each of its 4 staircases has 91 steps, and when you add the platform at the top, the total is 365, the number of days in a solar year. Twice a year, during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts shadows on the steps that create the illusion of a serpent slithering down the pyramid's edge. It is a perfect fusion of science, art, and mythology. Beyond pyramids, the Mayans built grand palaces, observatories, and ceremonial platforms. In cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Uxmal, you can still walk through plazas that once echoed with the sound of drums and chants. Their architecture was not just monumental, but thoughtful. Temples were placed to align with sunrise and sunset. Palaces were oriented to take advantage of the breeze and light, and ball courts were designed with acoustics in mind, amplifying the sound of the ritual games played within them. These were not random buildings. They were built with purpose, every stone a part of a larger spiritual and scientific vision, and all of this was achieved without the use of the wheel, metal tools, or animals to carry heavy loads. Instead, they relied on human labor, ingenuity, and generations of architectural knowledge passed down through time. Yet another of the Mayas' stunning achievements was their writing system. While many ancient cultures left behind only art or symbols, the Mayans developed a complete written language, one of the most sophisticated in the pre-Columbian Americas. Their script, composed of over 800 unique hieroglyphs, could express everything from names and dates to complex political events and poetic metaphors. Some glyphs represented sounds, others entire words or ideas. Together they allowed for a level of expression that was both functional and beautiful. These hieroglyphs were carved into stone stelae and temple walls, painted on ceramic vessels, and written on folded books made from tree bark known as codices. These codices, though most were destroyed during the Spanish conquest, contained astronomical records, historical chronicles, and sacred rituals. Of the thousands that once existed, only 4 survived the flames of colonial destruction. But these four, known as the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier codices, provide an invaluable glimpse into the minds of the Maya scribes. Reading their writing is like opening a window into a vanished world. We learn of kings who conquered rival cities, of rituals performed under specific moon phases, of offerings made to the gods during times of drought and war. We see love stories, family trees, and prayers for a good harvest. And through this writing, the Maya voice comes alive again. It is a voice of scholars and poets, of warriors and priests, of a people who believed in the power of knowledge to connect them to something greater. Deciphering this language has been a long journey for modern scholars, and it is still ongoing. Each glyph cracked is a word reclaimed, a story rediscovered, a piece of history returned to those who once lived it. Together, the achievements of the Mayan civilization form a tapestry of brilliance. Their mathematics laid the groundwork for scientific observation. Their astronomy gave order to the sky and time. Their architecture brought spiritual beliefs into physical form. Their writing preserved their thoughts, dreams, and history. And what is perhaps most remarkable is that all of this was achieved in isolation from the great civilizations of Europe, Asia, and Africa. The Maya did not borrow these ideas. They discovered them on their own. They looked to the stars and found meaning. They looked to the earth and found sustenance. And they looked within their minds and hearts and found the tools to build a civilization unlike any other. Even today, as you wander through the ruins of a forgotten temple or gaze upon the glyphs carved into an ancient monument, you can feel it, that quiet brilliance, that whisper of knowledge echoing through time. You can imagine the priest standing atop a pyramid, watching Venus rise in the dawn sky. You can picture the scribe hunched over a codex, carefully brushing the symbols of a sacred ritual. You can hear the heartbeat of a civilization that once pulsed with innovation and wonder, a people who understood the stars not just as lights in the sky, but as guides, companions, and storytellers. The Maya remind us that knowledge does not always come from modern machines or global empires. Sometimes it grows in the forests, flows through rivers, and rises with the morning sun. It speaks through silence, through symbols carved in stone, and through stories passed down over generations. It waits patiently to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. And so, as the night deepens and the stars return to their ancient places, let us remember the Maya, not as a mystery to be solved, but as a mirror reflecting the heights human thought can reach when guided by curiosity, observation, and belief. Let us carry their legacy gently into our dreams, as we drift into sleep, wrapped in the soft light of a civilization that never truly disappeared. In the lush green lands of ancient Mesoamerica, under the canopy of thick jungles and rolling hills, the daily rhythm of the Mayan people flowed like the quiet rivers that nourished their fields. Life in a Mayan village or city was more than survival. It was a complex, spiritual, and structured existence, woven with tradition, belief, and responsibility. Each person had a place in the grand design of their world, whether they were a king ruling from a grand stone palace or a humble farmer rising at dawn to tend to his maize fields. Though thousands of years have passed since their great cities thrived, we can still imagine how the Mayans lived, what they believed, how they worked, and how they understood their place in the universe. At the top of Mayan society stood the king known as the Ajor, a figure both political and divine. He was not merely a ruler in the earthly sense, but a sacred leader, believed to be chosen by the gods to act as a bridge between heaven and earth. The king's responsibilities went far beyond law or war. He was expected to maintain balance in the cosmos, to perform rituals that kept time flowing and crops growing. His words were law, but his actions were deeply spiritual. Around the king, a small but powerful class of nobles advised him and managed various aspects of the city-state. These nobles were warriors, governors, and high-ranking officials. They lived in stone houses near the temples and palaces, and were educated in reading, writing, and religious knowledge. Beside them stood the priests, a group with immense influence. The Mayan priests were scholars, astronomers, mathematicians, and spiritual guides. They kept the calendars, interpreted omens, read the stars, and led rituals that were believed to ensure the favor of the gods. They were the keepers of stories, myths, and history, many of which were carved into stone or written in sacred codices. For the Mayans, religion was not a separate part of life. It was the center of everything. Every harvest, every birth, every war, and every day began and ended with the gods in mind. The priests were guardians of this connection. Beneath the ruling class and the priests were the common people, farmers, artisans, builders, and traders. Though they did not live in palaces or attend royal ceremonies, they formed the true heart of the civilization. Most Mayans were farmers, rising with the sun and working the land with dedication. Their homes were simple, made of wood and thatch, and often built around a central courtyard shared by extended family members. Life was communal. Children played together while elders told stories, and meals were shared with gratitude. Corn or maize was the foundation of their diet and their belief system. The Mayans believed that the gods made humans from corn, and so every kernel was sacred, every harvest a gift. To grow their crops in the dense jungle environment, the Mayans developed a technique known as slash-and-burn agriculture. They would clear a patch of forest by cutting down the vegetation and letting it dry in the sun. Then they set it on fire, using the ash to fertilize the soil. After planting maize, beans, squash, and chili peppers, the fields would be used for a few seasons before being left to recover. While this method was effective in the short term, it required careful rotation and movement to avoid exhausting the land. Farmers often had multiple plots at different stages, some freshly burned, some ready to harvest, others resting. It was a rhythm that echoed the cycles of nature itself. Farming was not only about planting and harvesting, it involved rituals and offerings to the gods, prayers for rain, and ceremonies of gratitude. Before planting, farmers might bury offerings such as small figurines, maize kernels, or bits of jade to ask the gods for a good season. During dry periods, priests and farmers would come together to perform rain ceremonies, invoking the rain god Shak to bless the fields. Farming was sacred work, and the food produced was not simply sustenance, it was spiritual nourishment. Beyond the fields, other members of society practiced crafts and trades. Artisans carved intricate sculptures from stone and jade, painted beautiful ceramics, and wove elaborate textiles. Their work adorned temples, homes, and royal tombs. Each object had meaning, often tied to mythology or ritual. Blacksmiths, though working without iron, created tools and ornaments from obsidian and other stones. Builders constructed grand pyramids and plazas using nothing but stone tools, human labor, and deep knowledge passed down through generations. Their work, though hard and often dangerous, was filled with pride and purpose. Trade also played a crucial role in daily Mayan life. While each city-state was politically independent, trade routes connected them across vast distances. Merchants traveled on foot or by canoe, moving goods such as salt, cacao beans, obsidian, jade, feathers, and textiles. Cacao beans were so valuable that they were used as currency. A handful of cacao could buy food, tools, or even pay taxes. Markets were held in cities and villages, bustling with the chatter of buyers and sellers, the smell of fresh food, and the clinking of goods exchanged. Through trade, ideas traveled too. Styles of pottery, religious beliefs, and new tools spread across regions, helping to unify the culture even in its diversity. Religion was the invisible thread that connected all parts of Mayan life. The people believed in a vast pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with specific roles tied to nature, time, death, and life. The sun god, the maize god, the rain god, and the gods of the underworld were ever present. Life was seen as a journey between worlds, the earthly realm, the heavens, and the Nexabolba, or underworld. The Mayans believed that proper ritual and conduct could maintain balance between these realms. To honor the gods and ensure harmony, ceremonies were held frequently. Offerings of food, incense, flowers, and blood were made. Among the most dramatic rituals were human sacrifices. These were not acts of cruelty, but of cosmic necessity, as the Mayans believed that blood carried sacred energy. Sacrifices were made during important festivals, after military victories, or to mark celestial events. Victims were often war captives or volunteers chosen for their purity. The heart, considered the seat of the soul, was offered to the gods, while the people gathered in solemn reverence. It was a sacred moment, a bridge between human and divine. Rituals were not limited to the temples or the elite. Ordinary people also maintained small altars in their homes, prayed to household gods, and observed festivals throughout the year. Births, marriages, harvests, and even illnesses were occasions for religious observance. Shamans and healers used herbs, chants, and sacred objects to treat ailments, believing that sickness could be caused by spiritual imbalance. Dreams were interpreted, omens were read, and the future was glimpsed through sacred calendars. Children were raised with strong community values and a deep respect for their ancestors. From a young age, they learned the roles they would eventually play. Boys learning farming, crafting, or trade from their fathers. Girls learning weaving, cooking, and household rituals from their mothers. Education for the elite included reading, writing, and astronomy, while most children learned through observation and repetition. Names were often given based on the day of birth, each day believed to carry a unique energy and destiny. As night fell over the Mayan world, families gathered around small fires, the stars above reflecting the stories told by the elders. They believed the sky was a great book, written with the movements of the gods. Every star, every planet, had a role in the unfolding story of time. The Milky Way, they said, was a sacred river flowing through the heavens, a path that souls traveled on their way to the afterlife. Even in the quietest villages, this sense of cosmic connection was never far from mind. The Mayan world was one of order and devotion. Everything had its time, its place, and its meaning. From the cornfield to the temple, from birth to death, the people lived in harmony with the land, the gods, and each other. Their cities may have risen and fallen, but their culture was rich with wisdom and rhythm, a way of life deeply attuned to nature and the unseen forces around them. Today, the descendants of the ancient Maya still walk the same lands, speak the same languages, and grow the same corn. Though the great cities now lie in ruins, overgrown by jungle and softened by time, the spirit of the people endures. In the weaving patterns of a shawl, in the quiet prayers whispered at dawn, in the laughter of children chasing each other through the village, echoes of the ancient daily life continue. The Mayans lived with purpose, not just for survival, but for balance. Balance between nature and man, between body and spirit, between the known and the mysterious. Their daily life was not ordinary. It was sacred, rooted in a world where every tree had a soul, every season had a god, and every action carried meaning. They did not see themselves as separate from the earth or the sky. They were a part of it, living in the heart of a living, breathing cosmos. And so, as we drift into sleep, let us remember the quiet dignity of the Mayan farmer, rising before dawn to greet the sun with open hands. Let us remember the scribe painting sacred symbols by candlelight, the priest watching the stars for signs, the mother whispering lullabies beneath a thatched roof. Let us hear the soft rustle of maize leaves, the distant sound of a drum, the peaceful hum of a world in harmony. The daily life of the Mayans was not grand by modern standards, but it was full of meaning, of connection, and of deep, enduring beauty. In the heart of dense rainforests, where howler monkeys echo in the canopy and the scent of wild orchids fills the air, the Maya built cities of stone that still stand today, whispering stories of power, mystery, and time. These cities were not scattered villages or simple towns. They were masterpieces of architecture and organization, sacred landscapes carefully designed to reflect both the heavens above and the world below. As we journey through the ancient world of the Maya, we find ourselves walking the quiet, moss-covered plazas of Tikal, gazing at the elegantly carved facades of Palenque, climbing the steep pyramids of Kupan, and finally standing in awe beneath the shadow of Chichen Itza's great temple. These cities were more than centers of life. They were centers of the universe for the Maya. Tikal, one of the greatest and most powerful Maya cities, rose from the lowland jungles of modern-day northern Guatemala. At its height, it was home to tens of thousands of people and covered an area of more than 60 square kilometers. As you approach its massive stone temples, your footsteps fall quiet, as though the forest itself respects the weight of history. Temple Air, the temple of the Great Jaguar, towers over the Grand Plaza, its steep steps leading to the tomb of a long-dead king. The skyline of Tikal is defined by these pyramid temples, rising above the trees like fingers pointing to the sky. From the tops, the Maya priests once studied the stars, performed sacred rituals, and watched the sun rise and fall in perfect alignment with their calendar. The city was not built at random. Every structure had its purpose, its place in the spiritual design of the city. The plazas were not just gathering spaces. They were stages for rituals that connected the people with their gods. Ball courts, where sacred games were played, were often placed between temples representing the heavens and the underworld. This was not simply sport. It was ceremony, where the outcome held cosmic significance. Palaces were built with careful attention to light and shadow, designed to honor celestial events. The city was alive with meaning. At its heart was the belief that every stone laid had a reason, every wall a message, every building a mirror of the cosmos. Farther to the west, nestled in the foothills of the Chiapas Mountains, lay Palenque, a city known not for its size but for its elegance. While Tikal was grand and towering, Palenque was delicate and refined, with temples that looked like lace carved in stone. The Temple of the Inscriptions holds the tomb of Pakal the Great, one of the most celebrated kings in Mayan history. His sarcophagus lid, carved with intricate symbols, has puzzled and fascinated scholars for decades. Some see in it a journey to the underworld. Others claim it holds clues to forgotten knowledge. Whatever the meaning, it reflects the depth of Maya belief and the artistry of their hands. Palenque was a city of innovation. Its engineers built complex systems to manage water, using aqueducts and canals to control the flow of rivers and springs. The palaces featured towers, courtyards, and carved reliefs that told the stories of gods, kings, and the cycles of time. Here, politics and religion walked hand in hand, with each ruler considered a divine representative on earth. The city's walls were decorated with records of battles, births, and ceremonies, not just to glorify the rulers, but to preserve their connection to the cosmos. As sunlight filters through the jungle trees today, casting soft shadows on the limestone walls, one can almost hear the chants of priests, the soft rhythm of drums, the life that once filled these sacred halls. Further south, in the fertile valley of what is now Honduras, the city of Copan flourished with its own unique voice. Known for its extraordinary sculpture and intellectual life, Copan was a city of scholars, artisans, and astronomers. Its rulers, like the famed 18 Rabbit, commissioned some of the most elaborate stelae, tall stone monuments carved with portraits and hieroglyphic texts. Each stele was a story in stone, commemorating a moment in time, a ruler's reign, or a divine event. The hieroglyphic stairway at Copan, containing over 2,000 individual glyphs, remains the longest known Mayan text and stands as a testament to the Mayas' love for history, timekeeping, and storytelling. Copan was also a center of learning, where astronomers tracked celestial bodies and advised kings based on the stars. Their knowledge was not kept secret but engraved in stone, preserved for eternity. The ball court at Copan is among the most impressive in the Mayan world, suggesting not just the importance of the ritual game, but the architectural skill of its builders. Even the altars, circular, low, and elaborately carved, carried messages of cosmology, sacrifice, and the eternal dance between gods and men. Unlike some cities that projected power through sheer size, Copan commanded respect through wisdom, art, and the careful recording of time. As powerful as these southern cities were, their dominance did not last forever. By the late 9th century, something began to change. The jungles grew quiet. The plazas emptied. One by one, the great cities of the southern lowlands were abandoned. Tikal, once echoing with ceremony and song, fell silent. Palenka's halls were overtaken by vines and moss. Kopan's great stairway became a stairway for birds and lizards. Historians and archaeologists have long debated the cause. Some point to environmental collapse, droughts, overuse of land, and deforestation that led to famine. Others blame internal conflict, warfare between cities, political upheaval, or the breakdown of the social and spiritual order. It is likely that many factors converged, slowly unraveling the delicate balance of Maya society. With growing populations and limited farmland, pressure mounted, the belief systems that once held people together may have faltered when the rains stopped and the crops failed. Priests could no longer promise renewal. Kings could no longer maintain control. And so the people left. They did not vanish into thin air but moved on, settling in smaller communities, carrying their language, beliefs, and traditions with them. Though the temples crumbled, the people remained. Yet, while the southern cities declined, new centers of power rose in the northern Yucatan Peninsula, in what is now modern-day Mexico. Here, the great city of Chichen Itza began to shine. Unlike the cities buried in rainforest, Chichen Itza was built in a drier, more open region, where different challenges shaped a new kind of Maya society. The city drew not just from traditional Maya culture, but also from outside influences, Toltec, Central Mexican, and others. This blending of ideas created a city unlike any other, with architecture that was both familiar and new. At Chichen Itza, the Temple of Kukulkan, also known as El Castillo, stands as a perfect fusion of science and art. This pyramid was designed with such precision that during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts shadows along its staircase that create the illusion of a serpent descending the pyramid's side. This effect, combined with the carved serpent heads at the base, honored Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god. It was not simply a display of skill, but a message, a story told through light and shadow, through stone and silence. The city's ball court is the largest in the Maya world, measuring over 500 feet long. Here, the sacred game was played not for entertainment, but for ritual. Its acoustic design is so perfect that a whisper at one end can be heard clearly at the other. Nearby, the Temple of the Warriors, the observatory known as El Caracol, and the sacred cenote used for offerings and sacrifices all speak of a city still deeply spiritual, still connected to the cosmos, but transformed by time and trade. Chichen Itza thrived long after the fall of its southern cousins. It became a center of pilgrimage, of learning and of power. Pilgrims came from far and wide to see its wonders, to offer gifts to the gods, and to witness the alignment of sky and stone. Its survival is not just a geographical accident, but a reflection of adaptability. The northern cities learned to live with fewer rains, to blend traditions, and to create new forms of community and belief. While they did not avoid the eventual decline that came with the arrival of Spanish conquest, their legacy endured longer, their stories stretching further into time. Walking among the ruins today, we are struck not just by the size or beauty of the structures, but by the unity of vision that connects them. From Tikal's soaring temples to Palenque's graceful tombs, from Copan's scholarly stairways to Chichen Itza's cosmic serpent, each city reflects a deep understanding of place, of purpose, and of time. These were not just cities, they were living calendars, sacred maps and theatres of ritual. Every stone had meaning. Every plaza had a voice. Every shadow told a story. Though centuries have passed, and jungles have reclaimed what was once grand, the cities of the Maya continue to speak. They whisper in the rustle of leaves, in the chirping of birds that nest among the ruins, and in the quiet awe of those who visit them. They remind us that greatness is not measured only by conquest or wealth, but by the harmony between people and the world they live in. The Maya built with intention, lived with meaning, and watched the sky not just for navigation, but for inspiration. And as the night falls and the stars begin to appear, just as they did for the Maya priests and kings, we can close our eyes and imagine the glow of torches along the temple stairs, the soft sound of flutes drifting across the plazas, and the heartbeat of a civilization that lived in tune with the universe. Their cities may be silent now, but their story is still alive, etched in stone, written in the sky, and carried gently in the wind. For centuries, the great cities of the ancient Maya stood as testaments to human brilliance. Pyramids touched the clouds, astronomers watched the skies from sacred observatories, and kings performed rituals believed to maintain balance between the heavens and the earth. But one day the jungle began to grow silent. The fires in the ceremonial plazas faded. The ball courts, once filled with echoes of sacred games, fell still. One by one, the mighty cities of the southern lowlands, Tekal, Copan, Palenque, were abandoned. Roads became overgrown. Temples crumbled beneath vines. The people didn't vanish entirely, but something enormous had changed. What caused the sudden and mysterious decline of one of the most advanced civilizations in the ancient Americas? That question has intrigued archaeologists, historians, and dreamers alike for generations. There is no single answer. There was no invading army that marched through the jungle to erase the Maya. No earthquake swallowed their cities whole. Instead, the collapse was likely a slow unraveling, a quiet slipping away, piece by piece. As researchers have peeled back the layers of soil, translated stone glyphs, and studied ancient climate patterns, they have uncovered a series of interwoven theories, each one a thread in a larger tapestry of collapse. Some point to environmental destruction, others to political chaos, and some even to spiritual beliefs that may have guided the Maya to step away from their cities in reverence for time itself. One of the most supported theories focuses on environmental collapse. The Maya lived in a tropical region with rich forests, fertile soils, and reliable rainfall, at least in the beginning. But as their cities grew, so did the demand for resources. Trees were cut down to clear land for agriculture, to provide timber for construction, and to fuel the fires used for making lime plaster, a key ingredient in their architecture. Over generations, vast swaths of forest were reduced to farmland. The soil, no longer protected by trees, began to erode. Its fertility faded. The land could not recover as quickly as it was being used. The once lush surroundings began to thin, and the environment that had supported such growth slowly began to work against them. Worse still, evidence from lake sediments and cave stalagmites suggests that the region experienced a series of severe droughts during the time of the collapse. The rains became less predictable, and long dry seasons made it harder to grow crops. For a civilization so closely tied to nature and the cycles of time, these changes would have been devastating. The sacred relationship between humans, gods, and the land was breaking. The rituals meant to call the rain or protect the harvest may have stopped working, or at least appeared to. When water ran low and crops failed, the very foundation of society began to crack. As food became scarce and rainfall uncertain, the growing population only made matters worse. At the peak of the classic period, some Maya cities housed tens of thousands of people, all relying on a fragile system of agriculture. The slash and burn method, while effective for small populations, could not sustain large, permanent settlements without rotation and recovery. The result was a dangerous imbalance. More mouths to feed meant more land cleared, more trees burned, more pressure on the environment. And when the rains failed or the fields turned barren, hunger would have spread quickly. Food shortages became not just a problem of survival, but a political and social crisis. With famine often comes conflict, and this appears to have been true for the Maya. Political instability and warfare may have played a major role in the collapse. The Maya civilization was never a unified empire ruled by a single leader. Instead, it was a patchwork of independent city-states, each ruled by its own king. These cities often formed alliances or clashed with one another, sometimes engaging in ritual warfare meant to capture prisoners for sacrifice or to demonstrate power. But as the system strained under environmental and social pressure, these conflicts may have become more violent and widespread. Carvings from the late Classic period show scenes not just of glorious kings and peaceful ceremonies, but of captives, battles, and cities at war. Some monuments were left unfinished. Some royal lineages ended abruptly. Cities that once rivaled each other may have turned against one another in desperation. Rulers, once seen as divine, lost their legitimacy when they could no longer promise reign or stability. Without faith in their leaders, people may have rebelled or simply walked away, choosing to live in smaller, more manageable communities rather than remain under the shadow of crumbling authority. The story becomes even more complex when we consider the idea of external invasion. Some early theories suggested that a foreign people may have invaded the Maya lands, displacing or destroying the existing culture. But over time, this idea has lost support. There is little archaeological evidence of widespread invasion or cultural replacement during the period of collapse. No sudden change in pottery styles, no foreign weapons, no signs of violent conquest that match those seen in other ancient collapses. The cities were abandoned gradually, not destroyed overnight. The people did not disappear. They moved, they adapted. Their descendants still live across Central America, speaking Maya languages and practicing traditions that reach back thousands of years. The disappearance was not an end, it was a transformation. Perhaps the most fascinating and most often overlooked theory lies in the spiritual worldview of the Maya themselves. To the Maya, time was not a straight line but a circle, a repeating cycle of eras and events. They believed in cosmic ages, long periods governed by different gods and energies. The end of one era did not mean total destruction, but the beginning of another phase in cosmic history. This belief, recorded in their calendars and myths, may have influenced how they saw the collapse of their cities. When crops failed, when the rains did not come, when leaders fell and wars raged, they may have interpreted these signs as the natural end of an era. Not a failure of society, but a sacred transition written into the universe itself. In such a view, the abandonment of cities may not have been chaotic or desperate. It could have been intentional, ritualized, even spiritual. Communities may have chosen to leave their grand urban centers, returning to simpler ways of life in the forest or mountains, guided by prophecy or tradition. The silence that followed in the great plazas may not have been fear, but reverence. The pyramids, once filled with chanting priests and incense smoke, became monuments to a time that had passed. Like the changing of the seasons, like the rise and fall of the sun, the Maya may have seen the collapse not as death, but as rebirth. And so, the mystery of the Maya disappearance becomes less about finding a single cause, and more about understanding a delicate balance. Climate change, deforestation, overpopulation, political turmoil, and spiritual belief. All these threads weave together into a complex and human story. It is the story of a people who soared to incredible heights of knowledge and creativity, who lived in harmony with the land until that harmony became strained. A people who did not wait for outsiders to erase them, but who responded to crisis in their own way, sometimes with conflict, sometimes with migration, sometimes with sacred silence. Modern science continues to uncover new clues. Satellite imaging reveals hidden roads and forgotten cities buried beneath the jungle. Ancient pollen trapped in lakes tells us what crops were grown, and when, carved stone records are slowly being translated, revealing the names, dates, and events of long-lost kings. Each discovery brings us closer to understanding not just how the Maya collapsed, but how they lived, adapted, and endured. Because despite the ruins and the quiet temples, the Maya are not gone. Their languages are still spoken. Their stories are still told. Their rituals passed down through generations still honor the same gods, the same cycles, the same sun and moon. The Maya never truly disappeared. What vanished was a phase, a grand chapter of monumental cities and royal courts. But the people carried on, just as they had for thousands of years before. As we drift into sleep, we can imagine the last days of a once great city. The sound of footsteps leaving a temple behind, a priest looking to the sky one last time before walking into the forest, a mother gathering her children, whispering that they are going home, not because they failed, but because time itself had shifted. The wind moves through the trees. The jungle closes in, and slowly, gently, the city becomes quiet. But even now, the stars above are still in their places. The sun still rises in the east. The old calendars still turn, and perhaps somewhere deep in the night, the ancient drums still echo, soft, distant, eternal, reminding us that the end of one world is simply the beginning of another,